잠시만요. 제가 이것 때문에 밤을 새기 싫었는데 결국 밤을 샜네요. 오우. 그래도 오메 아 이거 빠졌어. 잠시만요. 자, 이것 때문에 제가 밤을 새기 싫었는데 어쩔 수 없이 지금 잠이 안 와서 자, 하게 됩니다. 지금 이제 4시부터 시작하긴 하는데요. 4시부터 시작합니다. 그래서 한 분 들어오셨습니다. 감사합니다. 저도 정신이 없는데 나 왜 이렇게 이걸로 감사해야 돼? 그래도 전보다 좀 나아요. 우리 퍼서비어런스 착륙할 때는 우리가 장장 7시간 동안 하고 또 밤도 새고 난리였는데 그래도 오늘은 1시간만 끝나겠죠? 그리고 이제 대부분이 이제 녹화된 걸 이제 보시긴 하겠는데 일단은 뭐 방송은 7시에 시작할 것 같은데요. 간단하게 지금 퍼서비어런스 착륙해가지고 지금 사진하고 지금 뭐 나름 연구 지질 연구에서 한번 이야기 나온 게 뭐 있어가지고 간단하게 보고 시작하도록 할게요. 저도 잘 모르지만 그래도 좋아한다는 그 생각만으로 못 살겠어요. 자 보시면은 제가 이제 어제 정리한 건데 자 이제 퍼서비어런스가 이제 첫 사진들을 이제 공개를 했었죠. 그래서 이거는 마스 정찰위성 화성 정찰위성이 이제 작은 사진이에요. 거의 700km 이제 거리를 두고요. 어마어마하게 먹는데 이거 안녕하세요. 주한님 오셨습니다. 감사합니다. 제가 기다리고 있었습니다. 저도 밤을 샜습니다. 감사하고요. 네, 뭐 나름 조금 준비를 해가지고 시작했어요. 네, 잘 봐주시기 바라고요. 지금 보시는 사진은 화성 정찰선이 이제 찍은 사진인데 이제 칼라 사진도 있었는데 첫 사진인데 밑에 있는 해지캠을 찍은 사진이에요. 근데 이게 커버를 이게 벗기지 않고 찍어서 이렇게 흑백으로 커버가 나왔는데 자 이거를 이제 벗기니까 이렇게 아주 선명한 사진이 되었죠. 그렇죠. 멋있었습니다. 정말 감동이었습니다. 그 자체만으로도. 그리고 이제 바퀴를 찍은 사진이에요. 이것도 해지캠 일부인데요. 여기 보시면은 이제 뒤쪽에 나오는데 이제 화성 돌들을 이제 이야기를 많이 하고 있어요. 참고로 지금 클럽하우스로 같이 켜놨는데요. 아무도 안 들어오네요. 역시나 해상대로 통신 능력을 좀 이야기하는 건데 안테나가 3개거든요. 안테나 3개인데 뭐 간단히 말해서 여기 이제 UHF 안테나 극초단파 안테나입니다. 이게 지금 이거는 쉽게 말해서 화질 죽이죠. 정말 죽입니다. 이게 무슨 안테나냐? 이게 화성에 있는 궤도에 있는 위성들하고 통신하는 안테나예요. 그래서 굉장히 다양하게 왜냐면 화성 같은 경우는 이제 직접 여기 밑에 보면 직접 시작하네 이제요. 직접 이제 교신하는 안테나가 있는데 이거는 이제 화성하고 화성 이승도 이제 그렇게 돼가지고 이제 장난 아니라고 밑에 안테나는 하이게인 안테나 즉 고이득 안테나입니다. 이게 이제 직접 시무리 통신하고 연결해가지고 통신을 하는 안테나예요. 그리고 여기가 이제 시무주 센터입니다. 여기가 마드리드에. 그래서 여기하고 통신을 하게 되고요. 여기가 1월 22일 정도에 지금 통신을 새로 만들었던 GSS 56이에요. 그래서 여기하고 좀 통신을 하게 된답니다. 그리고 여기 보이시죠? 마드리드, 골드스톤, 캔버라 이렇게 세 군데서 이제 보통 우주선들과 교신을 하게 되는데 보통은 저 마드리드에서 교신을 한다고 얘기를 하더라고요. 그리고 마지막으로 저이득 안테나가 있습니다. 그래서 이거는 이제 방향에 상관없이 이게 승수신은 가능합니다. 그래서 엄청나게 이게 여러 방법으로 지금 통신한다고요. 그래서 뭐 간단하게 얘기하면요, 이게 돌들에서 이야기하는데 화성이 이제 지질학자들이 화성 지질학자 있다는 게 전 처음 알았어요. 아까 봤던 거죠. 그래서 구멍이 뚫렸어. 네, 구멍이만 뚫려져 가지고 이거 옛날에 어디 봤던 거 아니냐라고 했었어요. 이게 또 움푹 파였어요. 이게 자세히 보니까 이렇게 움푹 파여가지고 있던 것도 이게 무슨 침식작용 받아가지고 된 게 아닐까요? 아니, 뭐 그런 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 간단하게 해서. 그래서 이 컬러 사진 등을 통해서 사진 잘 찍겠죠. 이 컬러 사진을 통해서 화성에 그 어떤 일이 벌어지는지를 한번 생각해 볼 수 있는 그런 사진이 되게 되시고요. 이것도 저 움푹 파인 지금 현무암 같이 생긴 그게 바이킹 2호가 상륙했을 때 사이트 그 비슷해가지고 그때를 생각하게 한다 이야기를 하고 있습니다. 자, 일단 바로 영상으로 보시죠. 영어가 안 돼가지고 제가 이거는 아니.
Thank you. Welcome. Very hard since we landed. The surface team has been getting the rover set up for the surface mission. They've been working Mars time over the weekend, making fantastic progress, and you'll hear about that today. You'll also see some brand new images and videos that we acquired over the weekend, or downlinked over the weekend. And these are really fantastic images of the surface of Mars and the rest of the descent imagery that we got a preview of on Friday. These images have always been part of the history of JPL. We have taken everyone along with us on our journeys across the solar system, through the rings of Saturn, looking back at the pale blue dot, and incredible panoramas on the surface of Mars. This is the first time we've been able to actually capture an event like the landing of a spacecraft on Mars. And these are pretty cool videos. And we will learn something by looking at the performance of the
요즘
vehicle in
있잖아요.
these videos.
그 마스크를 굉장히 잘 쓰고 계시는데 보시면은 두 겹을 같이 써요. 왜냐면은 바이든 정부가 이제 들어서가지고 마스크 쓰기를 엄청나게 강조하고 그 연방 정부에서는 무조건 그 정부 기관에서는 무조건 마스크를 써야 돼요. 의무예요. 근데 이제 보통 두 겹을 쓰는 것을 권장을 합니다. 바이든 정부는. 그래서 이렇게 두 겹으로 흰색하고 저렇게 겉으면 검은색으로 같이 쓰는 걸 볼 수 있습니다. 전에는 별로 잘 안 썼습니다. 이것이 이 사진은 언제냐면요. 이건 거의 40년 전 마리너 4호가 이게 찍은 디지털 사진이에요. 이 그림이 아니라. 이 사진이 1965년이에요. 마리너 4호 나오잖아, 그지? 저게 디지털 사진이에요. 그림까지 생긴 게. 감사합니다. 혹시 또 문제가 생기면 또 이야기해 주세요. 한번 했더니 좀 편안하네요.
So my hat is off. It's a great press conference today. My hat is off to the team, for getting the rover to where we are.
정말 그 65년이니까
And to learn more about that team, let me introduce Matt Wallace.
그렇죠. 66년이 좀 안 됐잖아요.
Thanks for the nice words about the team. I'll try to be brief because I want to get to this video, and I know you do too. I just want to give you a little bit of background on how this whole thing started.
그 마스 2020 있잖아요. 그리고 있는 퍼서비어런스 둘 다 같이 불쏴요.
She's been a gymnast since she
그게
was
무슨 차이냐고 얘기하시는데 전체 프로젝트가 전체 이 발사부터 해가지고 착륙해가지고 지금 모든 과정은 다 마스 2020이에요. 근데 마스 2020에서 우리 이제 로켓 떨어져 나가고 이제 크루즈 떨어져 나가고 스카이캔 다 떨어져 나갔잖아요. 그게 남은 게 뭐다? 퍼서비어런스예요. 그래서 이게 좀 저도 처음에는 몰랐는데 이게 차이점이 있더라고요.
I don't know about you, but I cannot do a backflip. But when she showed me the video, and I watched that camera pan up to the ceiling, and then the room go upside down, and then somehow right itself as she landed on her feet. I felt for a moment
우리는
that I had a glimpse into what it would be like if I could do a backflip. And that was the moment that inspired a phone call to my friend Jake over here.
1분 정도 되면 된다 이야기를 하고 있습니다.
And that's what led
저분인
to
것
this
같아요.
system, this entry, descent, and landing camera system. We call them the EDL cams that you're about to see.
1분이 아니면 더 긴지는 한번 확인을 해봐야 될 거고요. 바로 나오네요. 같이 띄워드릴까 생각하고
I don't know about you, but it is unlikely at this point in my career that I will pilot a spacecraft down to the surface of Mars. But when you see this imagery, I think you will feel like you are getting a glimpse into what it would be like to land successfully in Jezero crater with Perseverance. And so, without any further delay, I'm going to turn it over to Dave, who'll describe the system, and we'll get to the video. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Matt. The idea of adding a ruggedized commercial off-the-shelf hardware onto a flagship spacecraft to do a nice-to-have function proved to be quite an interesting challenge that Matt handed over to us. Along the way, we encountered one, maybe two people who were a little bit skeptical of what we were trying to do. But thankfully, we had the full support of project leadership, all the individuals directly supporting the 2020 mission. We're super excited to help, and in the end, we were able to actually make it happen. Our EDL CAM team were guided by two requirements, if you will. The first one was that the entry, descent, and landing system, camera system, must do no harm to the flight vehicle.
자, 마리너 4호의 1965년 사진과
This was our
자,
one critical
퍼서비어런스의
requirement,
2021년
and as
사진이
you all saw
아주
last Thursday,
대조가 되죠.
that requirement was met. The
65년이면요.
second item is not so much as of a requirement as it is a mantra, if you will. We get what we get, and we don't get upset. We wanted our EDL CAM system to get onto the vehicle and return amazing imagery of the vehicle landing in Jezero crater on Mars. Like every other element on the Mars 2020 spacecraft, individuals worked really hard and went above and beyond to make sure that their piece of the spacecraft did what it was supposed to do and would be successful. But in the end, we knew that our entry, descent, and landing camera system, the mission could still be 100% successful if our camera system didn't work. And if we could even get just one image or one piece of information back during EDL, that we shouldn't get upset and we should be excited.
EDA라고 하는 게 그 EDA라고 하잖아요. EDA는 뭐냐면 그 퍼서비어런스가 그 대기 화성 대기권 진입해가지고 진입 그리고 하강 그 착륙을 얘기하는 거라고 저도 배웠습니다. 그래서 그 과정을 이제 사진을 이제 찍어가지고 이야기해준다는 거죠.
And over 23,000 images of the vehicle descending down to the surface of Mars. As a quick introduction, if I could have the first graphic, a reminder for some of you exactly what are the sensors that we included in the entry, descent, and landing camera system. There are 3 cameras that are located on the top of the vehicle on the back shell. Those cameras actually capture high rate, 75 frames per second imagery of the parachute inflating in the Martian atmosphere.
보시면은 카메라가
One of the cameras
달려가지고 여기
stopped
동그란데 다
operating
카메라가
coincident
있거든요.
with the mortar fire when the parachute was deployed, and that's to be expected.
영상을 다 찍은 거죠.
It is a very high dynamic environment.
그래서 어느 영상을
Luckily, the other 2
찍혔는지
cameras
한번
continued to operate
볼만하겠습니다.
as expected and captured some amazing footage of the parachutes inflating in that Martian atmosphere. We put one
이번에
camera
카메라
on
많이
the bottom
달았습니다.
of the descent stage.
여기 낙하
That
센서
camera
달았고
looked down on the
여기
rover
스카이크랜도
as we
달았고
lowered the
그리고
rover on the
노브에도
bridles.
하나 둘 세 개 달았어요.
The mobility system latched into position, and then the vehicle touched down onto the surface of Mars. We also installed 2 cameras onto the rover, one on the top of the vehicle looking up on the descent stage, so the rover could actually see the descent stage, lower it down to the surface,
다들
and then
기대하면서 지금
ideally
트윗을
fly
올리고
off into the
있습니다.
distance after it had delivered Perseverance safely onto the surface. And then we also put a camera on the bottom of the rover, which actually looked down on the surface of Mars once the heat shield was dropped away. And that camera continued to capture imagery until the vehicle touched down on the surface of Mars. And then we also put a microphone on the port side of the rover. Now, unfortunately,
마이크를 왜 달았냐면은
we did
그
not
노버의
collect any
상태를
audio
소리로
during
이제 파악하기 위해서 이제 그 소리로서 이제 기계 음을 이제 녹음하려고 하는 것도 있고 또 화성의 그 대기의 바람 소리 등을 그 쫓아가려고 하는 것도 있어요.
So now the reaction to the EDL cam videos has been absolutely amazing
마이크폰 이게 나오죠,
around
계속요?
JPL. And we are super excited to actually share with all of you video imagery of Perseverance landing on the surface of
자동으로
Mars.
이게 업데이트 되기 때문에
Please roll
나오죠.
the video.
그래서 여기 마서 퍼서비어런스가 자, 내 화성 착륙장 앞줄에 여기 있습니다. 우리가 어떻게 했는지 보세요. 이거는 지금 이제 관제실에서 이제 그 모습을 다시 한번 보여주고 있죠. 와, 나오네요. 와, 이게 낙하산이 터지는 모습이 지금 보이고 있습니다. 낙하산이 지금 노고에서 퍼지는 모습을 지금 보여주고 있어요. 리얼 타임으로 지금 보여주고 있죠. 그리고 이게 지금 그 밑에 막이 이제 떨어지는 모습. 지금 보여주고 있네요.
Current velocity is 145 meters per second at an altitude of about 9.5 kilometers above the surface.
미치죠 저기가. 맞아. 낙하산이 지금 펼쳐지는 모습이 펼쳐져가지고 지금 한강하는 모습이네 지금. 와, 저렇게 하는구나.
Nav filter converge. Velocity solution 3.3 meters
밑에가 이제 다 화성의 이제 지표면이죠 이제.
7.4 kilometers.
Now has radar lock on the ground. Current velocity is about 100 meters per second, 6.6 kilometers above the surface. Perseverance is continuing to descend on the parachute. We are coming up
질문은 제가 이따 한꺼번에 정리해
terrain relative
보고 있어가지고
and
지금
subsequently
보니까
the timing of the landing engine.
초당 100m
About 90 meters
그리고
per second
6.6km
at an altitude of 4.2 kilometers.
랜딩 그리고
OBS valid.
4.2km 고도에 와 점점점 이제 지표면이 굉장히 잘 보이는 거죠.
Timing. TBA is nominal.
We have timing of the landing
와
engine.
전자고 군하고 이제 보이기 시작합니다.
Back shell set.
Current velocity is 83 meters per second at about 2.6 kilometers from the surface
저
of
과정을
Mars.
다 찍었나 보네요. 지금 밑에 지금 그 상황판이 보이죠 지금요. 낙하산하고 지금 이제 스카이크레인하고 이제 분리가 된 상태. 그리고 이제 분리가 됐고.
We have completed our terrain relative navigation. Current speed is about 30 meters per second, altitude of about 300 meters off the surface of Mars. We have started our constant velocity accordion, which means we are conducting the skycrane.
스카이크레인. 여기 왼쪽은 아마 그렇죠. 지금 지금 내부에서 이제 사진 스카이크레인. 와, 스카이크레인이 펼쳐지는 모습입니다. 이제 와이어가 이제 펼쳐져가지고 노브가 내려가고 있죠. 저거 너무 생생하다 진짜. 와, 큐리스트도 저러진 않았는데요, 그죠?
Tango Delta.
Touchdown confirmed.
와, 설치가 컨펌 했습니다. 확인됐습니다.
Ready to begin seeking the sands
아,
of
너무
past
생생한데
life.
진짜. 와, 정말 대단합니다. 어떻게 지금 너무 생생한데 진짜.
It gives me goosebumps every time I see it.
정말 상상 이상이에요. 저
I hope everybody kept their hands and arms inside the vehicle at all times while it was in motion.
아마 계속 한번 보여줄 것 같아요.
So I do need to say I wouldn't be sitting at this podium and you wouldn't have all seen that amazing imagery without a lot of support from an amazing team. Both those who worked directly on the EOCAM task as well as those who supported us
너무 정말
across the
대단합니다.
project. I thank you for everything you've done to get us here today.
정말 맞아요.
It's
진짜
an
멋있네
amazing,
진짜.
amazing accomplishment. So, I'm
저걸
going to
한번
turn it over to
아마
Al.
그 실시간으로
Al's
봤으면
gonna be
정말
our
더 멋있을
analyst.
건데
Doesn't have a telestrator, but he's going to actually walk through some of
11분의
the
차이가
videos in
있기
even more
때문에
detail
우리가
and actually show you
안타깝네
some
진짜.
just incredible things that you can actually see once you look
너무
at those
멋있죠.
videos.
잠깐 봤는데도 불구하고
I'm not sure the
오늘
color
다
commentators are supposed to have as many
밤
chills as
잤네
they do
진짜.
right now. And every time I see these videos, but I wanted to add my thanks to the.
바로 올릴 것 같아.
I mean, these videos and these images are the stuff of our dreams. It's been what we've been dreaming about for years. So thank you so much.
스페이스닷컴에 바로 올릴 것 같은.
Let's see.
봅니다.
As Dave mentioned, we'll try to walk through what we see a little bit. We won't take that much time
저분이
because you could
엄청나게
spend literally
신났어요.
all day looking at these videos, and some of us have spent all the weekend looking at these videos. But we'll just try to show you some highlights of what we've been seeing.
그렇죠.
And invite
실시간으로
you all to continue
봤으면은
to look for more things.
아마 이제 아마
화성이
화성이 이제 인간이 간다면은 아마 정말 저거를 아마 실제로 이제 체험할 수 있을 것 같은 느낌이 듭니다 진짜.
To not blink, because things go really
야,
fast here.
낙하산 펼쳐져가지고 위에서
You
보면
can see that,
밑에서 보면
you get a sense
보시죠.
really of how violent that parachute deploying.
아주 완벽하게 펴졌습니다.
The parachute pack, the parachute is packed so densely that the pack is basically the same density.
그 잠깐 보셨겠지만 보셨겠지만은 아니, 잠깐 이제 그 저번에 보셨겠지만은 저 낙하산 만드는 게 보통 일이 아니라서 나사도 엄청나게 고생하고 또 그 큐리오시티 아니 지금 맥소마스 지금 일본 인도 그 러시아 유럽에서 그렇게 준비하는 것도 엄청 힘들거든요. 정말 잘 펴져서 완벽하네 진짜.
High speed and then or real time, and then we'll slow it down and take a look at the details. Okay, so let's try to walk through this a bit slower, this time at about quarter speed, and we'll pause at times to point out things we see. So let's start that rolling. Okay, here you can see the pack getting pushed out of there. You can kind of see the pack right in the middle, being pushed, and the parachute lid, which is right on top of it, it's kind of that circle to the left of the pack, was on top of the pack.
우리가 봤던 것을 이제 분석을 하는 거예요. 같아서 아마 뭐 여기서 봐도 여기서 보고 끝내도 괜찮긴 하고 거기서 계속 볼 것 같습니다.
You can also see some of the other things that have popped off of that lid, which is kind of expected given how violent this launch really is.
그래서 한번 제가 프리스 한번 좀 봐가지고 분석을 해드릴게요. 프리스에서 이제 이야기할 것 같은데.
So that's as far as it's going to go. It's where the parachute's going to start inflating.
지금
that's about 150 feet behind the spacecraft, and it got there in just under 1 second.
그러니까 이거는요. 처음성 나타나는 이게 크기가 화산 이게 낙하산 크기가 21.5m짜리예요. 어마어마한 큰 겁니다.
We've seen that in some of our testing here on Earth at high altitude as well. So let's keep going and take a look at the inflation. So that inflation really looks textbook. It's nice and symmetric.
여기 독일의 우주기관이 아주 뭐라고 댓글을 했냐면은 와 정말 놀랐습니다. 이 놀라운 비디오에 참여하세요. 참으로 소름 끼친다고 했어요.
In the parachute system. So the fact that we don't see any evidence of tangling or any kind of other misbehavior is great news. And I'm sure we'll be studying this video for many, many years and picking it apart frame by frame. And of course, we have a second camera on board as well that recorded this launch and inflation of the parachute. You might notice the pattern that's on the parachute here. Distinct patterns are useful in helping us determine the clocking or orientation of the parachute. Also, the contrasting sections can be useful in tracking different positions of the parachute, different portions of the parachute as it inflates. So it's especially useful when we have multiple cameras, as we do here. In addition to enabling incredible science, we hope our efforts and our engineering can inspire others. Sometimes we leave messages in our work for others to find for that purpose. So we invite you all to give it a shot and show your work. Let's move on to the rover download camera and take a look at that in a little bit more detail.
하늘 크레인 조작은 너무나 멋져요.
You can see the heat shield falling
야, 이제 백실이 이제 열차 표방이 이제 떨어 나가는 거죠, 지금요. 열차 표방이.
On the heat shield. First, we see the medley components on the heat shield. You can see the electronics box and the gold wires.
자, 이것은 의심할 여지 없이 내가 본 노보 우주 탐사 임무 중에서 가장 이상적인 영상입니다. 이렇게 댓글을 이게 트윗에 올린 분도 계시고.
We can also see some white flecks in different places, both on the heat shield and free flying, which are likely frost that accumulated on the heat shield. That heat shield is really
스카이 크레인 스카이 크레인이 이제 그 퍼서비어런스를 이제 쭉 내려줄 때 딱 그 댓글이 뭐냐면. 내가 나갈 거야.
Something we didn't expect to see if you kind of look at the 4 o'clock position on the heat shield or so towards the middle, somewhere between the middle and the edge. One of the springs that helped push the heat shield off seems to have come loose. It doesn't, it's not a big deal. It's definitely not what we expected. If you look at the other 8 strings, they actually are where they're supposed to be all around the edge of the heat shield.
추적이 용이하다. 이렇게 댓글을
but it's something we didn't expect and think we wouldn't have seen if we didn't have the camera system to show us what was going on. So let's keep rolling here.
야, 줄이 엉키지 않았어요. 그래서 배포는 0.7초가 걸렸습니다. 터지는데요.
This is great.
야, 역시 나사에서 벌써 영상이 올라왔습니다. 드디어.
That was unexpected in flight. So that's very useful to have this video to show us that. So in the interest of time, let's skip ahead to about 15 seconds before back shell separation. So starting this video here, you can see that the spacecraft is rocking back and forth while hanging under the parachute. This rocking is less than it was earlier in flight, but pretty much what we expect. There, that white flash was back shell separation, and you can see us throttle up and begin our divert maneuver. You see the vehicle turned over, so we're actually beginning to fly east. And that's why you can see the delta over there. As it maneuvers eastward to the eventual landing site, it actually passes over the field of view, will pass over the landing site, and then kind of overshoot it a little bit because it's got to stop that horizontal divert that we did. You can see everything's nice and smooth now that the engines are under control. that on-chute parachute rocking is gone.
나사가
So here we are,
나사 이름
slowing down and stopping, and we're coming straight down on our eventual landing site here. You can see that as we really begin to slow down here, you can see the engines as we get lower throttle up there and stop us here. And you can see it beginning to push all that dust around on the ground on the two sides. That shaking there is the rover deploying and the mobility during sky crane. And here we are coming down.
역추진 로켓에서 저런 모습을 보여주는 거죠.
We'll see in other videos. But that settles down right before we hit the ground in a nice, safe, flat spot. There doesn't appear to be too much.
마치 우리 실시간으로 보는 건 느낌이 딱 드네요, 정말로.
So that was the rover's view looking down. Let's take a look at the descent stage view looking down as well during that sky crane portion of flight. So here we go. The rover begins to drop away from the descent stage, and that's the first part of mobility deployed. You can kind of see here right before we paused that the mobility kind of shook a little bit in that first deployment. Here you can see the bridles that are hanging down from the top of the picture. Those are what's supporting the weight of the rover below the descent stage. And if you look down toward the left, the bottom part of the image and toward the left, you can see that gold. That's what's transferring all the information between the rover and the descent stage, including this video. This picture is coming down from the camera up on the descent stage down to the rover through that board, in addition to other information that's going back and forth.
그래서 저는 유튜브를
So as we
하지만 유튜브
keep
시작이
going here,
있으면 진짜
you can see the bogey deployment that's on both sides of the
조회수를
motor.
올린다는데
You
그런 게
can see those wheels, the back
그것보다도
two wheels on either
아,
side
얘는
spinning
이렇게
down. That
참여하셨다는
caused a
게
little bit of
정말
rocking of the rover
감사합니다,
as
진짜로.
expected, but you can kind of see that kind of settles out a little bit right as we enter that plume and dust cloud as we get down and touch down. And the video ends at touchdown, of course, because the camera that's taking this video is about to leave this area in a hurry. On that descent stage after
제가 그 나사 영상을 한번 나사에서 이제 바로 올린 영상을
So now
다시
take a
한번
look at the rover
보여드릴게요.
upload camera. So now staring up at the descent stage from the rover.
시키고 이걸 한번 다시 한번 우리 보겠습니다. 3분짜리. 네.
Maneuver, where the spacecraft will jettison the entry balance masses in preparation for parachute deploy and to roll over to give the radar a better look at the ground.
자, 아까 35% 스피드하고 리얼 타임하고
The navigation has confirmed that the parachute has deployed and we are seeing significant deceleration in the velocity. Our current velocity is 440 meters per second at an altitude of about 12 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
네, 열차표 떨어 나가고요.
Heat shield set.
Perseverance is now slowed to subsonic speeds and the heat shield has been separated. This allows both the radar and the cameras to get their first look at the surface. Current velocity is 145 meters per second at an altitude of about 9.5 kilometers above the
저도
surface.
감사합니다. 저도 여기서 이제 같이 보지 않았으면 저도 그냥 자버렸을 것 같은데. 그 생각이 너무 듭니다, 진짜로. 이 4시에 누가 이거 보려고 이러고 있겠습니까? 너무 감사합니다.
Nav filter converge. Velocity solution 3.3 meters per second.
근데 진짜 지형이요.
7.4 kilometers.
진짜 앞으로 우리 이제 저기 아마 낙하산이 점점 내려가서 점점 내려가고 이제요.
Perseverance is continuing to descend on the parachute. We are coming up on the initialization of terrain relative navigation and subsequently the priming of the landing engines. Our current velocity is about 90 meters per second at an altitude of 4.2 kilometers.
진짜 그 착륙할 때 그 200명 본 것보다도 더 저도 정말 감격스럽네요.
Confirmation that the lander vision system has produced a valid solution.
네, 삼각지 모양으로 생겨가지고. 근데
TBA is nominal.
저는 그 크레이터가 저도 진짜 인상적으로 보이네요. 여기 둥글둥글. 이게 그렇죠. 이제 낙하산이 떨어져 나가고.
At about 2.6 kilometers from the surface of Mars. We have confirmation that the back shell has separated. We are currently performing the divert maneuver. Current velocity is about 75 meters per second at an altitude
그래도 참 살아있다는 느낌이 드는 게 뭐냐면은 보통 달 같은 경우는 크레이터에 완전히 크레이터가 완전히 그냥 딱딱하게 그냥 완전히 선명하잖아요. 근데 여기 크레이터 안에 그 물결 모양의 그 바람 그 모래 바람 모양의 그 지형이 있다는 게 역시 좀 살아있을 수 있을까 느낌이 많이 들어요. 야 드디어 착륙을 드디어 이제 천천히 이제 하강. 그렇죠. 이제
about 20
이제
meters off the surface.
전전되고, 야, 저 사진까지 찍을 수 있어요. 야, 어마어마하네요, 진짜.
We're getting signals from MRO. Tango Delta.
야.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the sands of past life.
그때 그 간격보다 그때보다 더 간격있었죠. 네, 또 계속 영상 볼 건데요.
Rover. So here we go. We got a
이제
really
설명을
close-up
하고
look at the
이렇게
descent stage, and we can start rolling that. You can see the descent stage as the rover begins to fall away from it, and see the effect of that rover wobble from the mobility deploy. So pausing here, the first thing that most people will probably notice is that there's no plumes or no visible smoke or anything else coming out of the rockets at the corner of the descent stage. That's expected. Hydrazine isn't a combustion reaction when we burn it. The exhaust products are nitrogen and hydrogen, which are clear. So we expect the plumes to be clear. That's what we see in tests here on Earth as well. So I can promise you those engines are on, though.
저기
One thing
이제
you can
그
see in the Earth testing we do is that the chambers, the thrust chambers of those engines get kind of hot and glow pink. And you can kind of see
여기
that in
지금
the
동그라미가 다 이게 역추진 그 분사하는 곳이라서 여기서 이제 나오는
look
거고.
closely right above the engine bell there on the thrust chamber. You can see little streaks of pink on there, and that's what's happening. As the engines have been on for a long time, they get really hot. And that heat shows up there in those pink stripes that we see. So take a look at that closely when you get a chance to look at the image in some detail. As with the previous videos, you can see the bridles that are supporting the weight of the rover there at the bottom now of this image, and that umbilical, again, transferring data back and forth between the descent stage and the rover. So let's keep going a little bit more. You'll see the image begin to wobble a little bit here.
좀 전문적으로 이제
Not the descent
그
stage wobbling, it's actually that rover tipping back and forth a little bit as we saw as the mobility deploys, both the first initial mobility deploy and then the
비디오에 많은 그 엠팩 아티팩트가 있습니다. 이것은 먼지 구름이 있는 비디오를 그 인코딩할 때 일반적인 것입니다. 이것이 당시 녹화된 품질인지 아니면 지구로 돌아가기 위해서 뭐 트랜스포팅이 되는지 아는 사람이 있습니까? 즉 DSU니까 아마 여기에 더 높은 품질 이미지가 있을까요? 라고 의문을 좀 제기했는데 댓글은 뭐 단 사람 없고요.
And then we'll see the descent stage begin to turn and ascend and head out toward the northwest with the umbilical dangling behind it. Since the rover was pointed almost directly to the southeast, the descent stage chose to go toward the back. That's also to make sure, of course, that the engines don't plume the rover, that we don't damage the rover with that engine thrust.
먼지 모양의 먼지 모양의 그 형상들,
Jessica will show you about in a little bit.
먼지가 흩날리는 모습 있잖아요.
So I can and have watched those videos for hours and keep seeing new stuff every time. So I invite you all to do that too. So now I'll turn it over to Justin, who will talk to you a little bit about the images we've been taking on the ground.
All right, thank you, Al. I'm Justin Mackey. I'm the Mars 2020 Perseverance imaging scientist here, and I developed imaging systems at JPL.
퍼서비어런스 이제 계정에서도
Dave asked
그런
me to help
나옵니다.
out with the EDL cam development about 6 years ago. I was really excited about it. I knew it would be challenging and interesting, and even possibly spectacular, but I had no idea that it would be this amazing, and we are so happy.
화성에 착륙하는 것은 긴장감, 드라마, 소음의 쇄도입니다. 그런 다음 먼지가 제거되면 평온함과 웅장함이 있습니다라고 마스 퍼서비어런스 나사의 퍼서비어런스 마스 로저님이 트윗을 하셨어요. 화성에서 트윗을 하시나?
And when I saw these images come down, I have to say, I was truly amazed. And I know it's been a tough year for everybody, and we're hoping that maybe these images will, help brighten people's day. Your smartphones and make them your screen backgrounds and things. Just really.
이거랑 비슷하대.
So now we're on Mars, and we'll talk a little bit about what we've been doing.
화성의 모습이 지금 어떤 모습으로 비슷하냐면
over the weekend, we deployed the RSM. If you go to the first picture, there's a picture of the remote sensing mast, the RSM. Which is that mast on the rover, and you can see the navigation cameras up there, the left and right navigation cameras, or nav cams as we call them. This is another new imaging system that we've developed here specifically for the 2020 mission. These cameras represent a pretty significant advancement over previous imaging systems that we've flown. These are 20 megapixel color cameras with very high resolution and wide
이거,
angle
이거랑
lenses
비슷하네.
that we use to
이거랑
basically
비슷하네,
map
이거.
out the surface as the rover drives, and then we use these images to do planning and things. And so we, the first thing we did after we deployed the mast is we started imaging the surface. So the next
이거랑
slide
비슷하네, 이거.
shows
이거랑.
one of our first images from the cameras.
이게 사막의 그
This
모래
image is actually in low
그
resolution.
흔적하고 지금 화성의
So it's one
모습하고
quarter of the
비슷하다고
full
이야기를
resolution
하네요
of
지금요.
the camera, so it's been shrunk
댓글에서.
down. But you can see right there the vista that we're seeing. This is the rover, obviously on Mars.
지구 사막에서 바람
Some of the
스파이크처럼
material
보이는
that landed on
능선은
the deck.
무엇입니까? 화성에 바람이
But everything
오는데
looks in good
바람
shape, and so we're using these
모래
images to
그렇다면 무엇이
inspect
그들을 만드는
not only
것일까요?
to be
라고
equal with
했어요.
the surface around us. The next slide shows the view down towards the surface.
그죠?
You can see the
비싸죠.
wheels
비싼
there.
모습
This is the
가지고
same surface you just saw in the EDL cam videos. You can see some of the scouring that the
퍼서비어런스
rocket
님이
plumes did for us, clean it off,
또
make it nice and
오는데
clean, so we can take
아
pictures
아까
of
올린
it,
거예요.
dust it off for us.
내 화성
The next
착륙장
slide
앞줄
shows
좌석이
the
여기
view
있습니다. 우리가 어떻게 했는지
looking out
보세요.
towards the south, and this just an amazing scene here. This is it. This is Mars. We're here in our place that we're going to be exploring over the next
이거죠, 이거.
months and coming years. And it's just really exciting to
화성
see,
모습 좀 봐요.
these scenes
화성에
look familiar
착륙하는 것은
to us,
긴장감, 드라마.
look Earth-like in a sense.
소음이
You see the
있었는데요. 그런데 먼지가 있을
mountains back
때는
there and the rocks and
타고난과
things.
웅장함이 있습니다.
It really is the surface of an alien world, and we've just arrived. You can also see some more scouring there over on the right. The next image looks over towards the west. You can see the delta out there on the horizon, and again more scouring from the rocket plumes. And then we take all of these images and we stitch them together into panoramas. And so that the next frame shows the full panorama from the nav cam stitched together.
아주
We're still
계속 올리고
working
있어요.
out calibration and things. So this is approximate color, but it just gives you a feel for
여기는
the
뭐라
vista
하셨나?
here that we're our new environment that we're going
아
to
이게
explore.
지금
And
로버의
hoping,
첫 번째
everyone
파노라마예요.
will
첫
join
번째
us,
파노라마입니다.
in seeing these images. We're,
지금 보고 계시는 게
today we're
지금
gonna be
로버의
releasing a
역시 이걸
whole
봐야 돼.
slew of
첫
raw
번째
images,
파노라마 사진입니다 지금.
fire hose of data,
야,
basically. We have thousands of images
이건
already
실제로
from the
중요해.
EDL
아,
cameras,
이거 없다.
nav cams. You've seen the has cams. And so we will be putting those out on the website today for
이거
people
또
to
올려야 돼서
download
참고하십시오.
and process yourself, or just look at the great pictures, find your favorite picture, and make it your screen background. And then the last image that I just wanted to point out is the first image, one of the first images from the Mastcam Z camera. This is another next generation imaging system on the rover. Jim Bell is the PI. I'm the deputy PI for this, working with our industry partners, MS Cubed, down in San Diego. This is just a fantastic imaging system. This is a preview of things to come. This system has a zoom lens on it. That's what the Z stands for. We're going to get incredibly high-resolution photos from this imaging system. I just wanted to point out a few things in this picture. On the far right, you can see those cables where they had been cut in the video that you just saw. So there's kind of a close-up of that. And then just in the middle, to the left of that black instrument, that's the rover upload camera. That's the camera that actually took the video of the sky crane as we were coming down. And then in the bottom of the frame is the Mastcam Z calibration target. There's two of them. There's the circular one with the
여기 지금 오른쪽 보면 이게 판이에요. 뭐 공룡, 뭐 고사리 다 새겨놓은 게 판이 있거든요.
Our partners from Los Alamos.
여기 슈퍼캠인가요? 슈퍼캠
We're going to be
지금까지
commissioning
있는데.
Supercam over the next few days. And then finally, as a teaser, I'll point out that there is a little antenna there to the right on that box, center right. That is the helicopter antenna. It's a helicopter base station location. And preview of things to come. We're excited about that as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to talk about latest status.
All right. Thank you, Justin. I know you can attest firsthand to being in the control room and the excitement that everybody has been experiencing, seeing all these images from the surface. And as they come down, we're immediately sharing them and everybody clapping and smiles all around. So, great camera suite. So I am happy to report that Perseverance is healthy and continuing with activities as we have been planning them over the first few sols of the surface.
자, 그래서 퍼서비어런스 노버에서 이미 500개의 주문이 실행 명령을 내렸다. 그리고 완벽하게 응답되고 있습니다. 그리고 그는 완벽한 건강 상태에 있고 그 고해득 안테나 배치돼서 데이터 수신 및 전송 속도를 높일 수 있습니다라고 했습니다. 그래서 보통 전송 명령, 그 전송 그 코드 명령은 아마 고해득 하면 그 안테나도 아마 보통 직접 직접 수신을 하는 거거든요. 직접 수신을 하는 것 같아요.
Things have been going well. A couple key highlights. So we have fired and released a launch lock restraints to allow
진짜 그 착륙했을 때 그 이상입니다.
Deployed. We saw the remote sensing mast, but one of those also being the high gain antenna. Now, this is important for the high gain antenna to be deployed because it increases our uplink rate to the rover, and so it will allow us to send higher volume of instructions to Perseverance and allow her to perform more involved activities over the days to come.
거기 하강
Additionally, with respect to our
진입 하강
communication,
그 착륙 비디오에 오디오가 없었기 때문에 대체 사운드 트랙을 만들어야 된다는 공에서 올라가서 바닥과 도켓을 낼 수 있을까요? 그런 식으로 해야 되는데.
The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the MAVEN Orbiter, Trace Gas Observer, the TGO, and Odyssey spacecraft. And so we think those teams and
이것이 화성 표면이다라고 이제 지금 공개된 사진이죠.
to relay all of the information that we, all these beautiful images that we are looking at today. The remote sensing mast motion checks were nominal, and as
마지막으로 나사는 자 퍼서비어런스 첫 번째 마스터캠 G 이미지입니다. 마스터캠을 찍은 사진이네요. 이 G는 줌이에요. G가 줌이구나. G라는 뜻은 줌이고 줌으로 이게 줌으로 이게 해가지고 찍은 사진이다.
We can't wait to continue to use this payload suite. Our backup computer was turned on yesterday,
오늘 뭐 그냥 밤샌 거 어제 아주 뭐 가보했습니다. 그래서 첫 번째 고해상도가 아니라 저해상도 카메라 그 화성 파노라 사진이다.
And the Ingenuity helicopter has also been checked out.
지금 로버의 지금 상태를 이렇게 지금 보여주고 이렇게 모습도 이렇게 보여주고 있습니다. 바퀴 사이도 지금 보여주고 있고요.
But looking ahead, we are excited to be on our surface flight software.
지금 제가 올렸는데
it is a much more surface capable, a lot more capabilities for the surface mission as part of this flight software load. It will take us a few days to transition, but once we're on that load, it will allow us to do further in-depth checkouts of the instrument, as well as deploy the robotic arm and exercise some of the turret items that you see in this image. So you can see that we have our coring drill in the center, our pixel and Sherlock instruments mounted to the side, and that black tank is to support the gas dust removal tool, which will remove dust from the surfaces that we will be inspecting later. So coming up here, the wheels, if you noticed in the image now, are off to the side. We will be performing a wiggle. We'll straighten those up. We'll do a short drive. And as I mentioned, deploy the robotic arm. And then continue with the
하이라이스가 뭐냐면요. 하이라이스는
그
화성 정찰 궤도선에 달린 카메라의 이름이에요. 카메라 고해상도 카메라거든요. 그래서 이게 지금 찍힌 거예요. 지금. 지금 이게 지금 뭐냐면은 바로 낙하산. 심지어는 좀 크게 해줄게요.
MRO spacecraft Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and the high-rise team was able to find our hardware on the surface of Mars. So if you see in this image, the next pop-up, you can see that we have the descent stage, the parachute, and the heat shield.
지금 왼쪽이 그 저기 나오죠 지금. 왼쪽이 지금 그 낙하산하고 백셀이 지금 떨어진 지점이고, 그리고 여기가 이게 그 디센트니까 이게 스카이 크레인 틀어지고 퍼서비어런스가 여기 있고, 그리고 열차 표막이 여기 있고, 그렇죠.
And so it's very exciting. You can see all these different components now that we've landed on the surface.
이렇게 워싱턴에서 진짜
이건 할 거 그랬어요.
진짜 나오죠 지금. 이 사진.
The entry, descent, landing event from their perspective.
사진 포착을 너무 잘한 것 같아요 이번에는. 앞으로 더 발전하겠지만은 진짜 그 큐리오시티 때보다는 엄청나게 발전한 거죠. 2012년 큐리오시티 때보다는. 어떻게 큐리오시티인지 잊혀질 것 같아요.
One more gift, I'll say, that we've been able to receive from this package. Over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Jessica. So I think we probably have overloaded your visual sense for a little bit, but we're going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to have some fun here for a second too. So I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to talk to you now with this.
저걸
This is the microphone. That
저게 바로 뭐냐면은 저게 마이크로폰이에요. 저게
when the
녹음기예요.
EDOCam system was first envisioned, it was set up as just a bunch of cameras to capture some amazing imagery on the surface of Mars.
저것이 이제 장착이 돼가지고 이제 소리를 녹음할 수 있다는 거죠.
Another call from Matt. After talking to headquarters, asked the question, could we possibly put a microphone as part of our EDO
해상도가 한 4분의 1 해상도
So we worked with the team, we
낮다죠.
took a
얘기를 하고
look,
있어요.
and sure enough, it was something that we could do.
보이시죠?
And so we started off that detailed design and identifying a microphone that would work for us and getting it onto the vehicle. About a year after this first started, I was giving a tour at JPL. And I happened to mention to the group that I was giving the tour to that the decision had come down and we were working to actually include a microphone onto the vehicle. And after the tour was done, a gal came up to me and she said something to me that I won't forget. She said, I'm super excited that you guys are going to try to put a microphone onto the rover and get it to the surface of Mars. And I was very appreciative. And I asked her, I said, I'm curious, why is it that this relates to you so much? And her response was that her sister was visually impaired. She was not able to see these images that we saw earlier.
여기서는 이제 작동이 안 된 것 같아요.
And while she tries to describe them to her, she felt that she just can't quite capture that same sense of amazement that she gets when she gets them visually. And that by actually getting a microphone onto the surface of Mars, the hope was that she'd be able to experience things on Mars the same way that she was when she actually looked at them. And that stuck with me. We continued to work super hard to make sure that this microphone would work. And that's part of the reason we were disappointed.
잠깐 소리를 끄고 화성에서 들리는 소리를 한번 여기 지금 보이실 거예요. 여기 한번 들려 맞는 것 같은데. 바람 소리. 와. 벌써 올렸었나 보네요, 여기. 이 샘플, 오디오 샘플이 있는데 이게 이 소리를 이제 이런 소리를 녹음하는 이제 그런 것 같아요.
Sounds from the surface of Mars. So, with that, I invite you now to, if you would like to close your eyes and just imagine yourself sitting on the surface of Mars and listening to the surroundings.
여기서
If I could have the first one.
근처에 있는 이제 암석을 이제 보여주고 있다. 지금 보이죠? 여기 더 빠른 것 같은데. 저게 바로 화성에서 들리는 그 추출한 첫 번째 소리.
So that gentle whirl that happens in the background, that is a noise made by the rover. But yes, what you did hear 10 seconds in was an actual wind gust on the surface of Mars, picked up by the microphone, and sent back to us here on Earth. The analysis indicates that was around a 5 meter per second type of wind gust. So we can sit here now and actually tell you that we have recorded sound from the surface of Mars. So we have a second one, which basically further reduces the noise of the rover, so you can just hear what the wind would sound like on Mars. And once again, I invite you to sit back and have a listen to what it would sound like to be on Mars.
나사는 또한 탐사선이 착륙한 후에 화성 표면에서 처음으로 녹음한 소리를 퍼서비어런스 마이크를 포함했습니다. 몇 초 만에 화성의 바람 돌풍 소리를 들을 수 있습니다. 아, 이 소리예요. 이 소리가 지금 바람의 돌풍 소리.
It's cool. It's really neat, overwhelming, if you will. I can't remember what I was going to go and say next. So looking forward to doing some amazing things with the microphones going forward. We need to work with the ops team. There's some great science that they're looking to do. We're hopeful that we continue to use these microphones, both the SuperCam microphone and the EDOCam microphone, to capture sounds, perhaps the rocks interacting with the surface. SuperCam is going to use theirs to get some great data of them zapping rocks. So as you've heard and will continue to hear, we're just beginning to do amazing things on the surface of Mars.
And now Ken is going to talk to you a little bit about the science that we've done to date
이게
and what they're
화성에서 온
looking
바람
forward to
소리입니다.
doing as we continue to move forward.
Thanks, Dave. And I'll start by just taking this opportunity to say to Matt, Dave, Al, and everybody else on this fantastic team, thank you for the ride of a lifetime. That is just incredible, what we've seen today, and what I'm sure we'll continue to see as the mission unfolds. So with all the focus on these spectacular videos and audio, we wanted to make sure to remind you that there's plenty of science going on already, with hundreds of team members poring over every new image. So if we can get the first of those images, as you'll see in this NavCam frame, we start with what may seem like very basic observations: light rocks, dark rocks, holy rocks. That's holy with an E. We use these very generic terms at this early stage until we have more data that allow us to test our hypotheses and make more confident interpretations. Follow along with the mission, and you'll see that this is a theme. As we get closer, our view of Mars continues to resolve and a coherent story emerges. Next image, please. Finally, I just want to briefly point out that we are finding real science value in these EDL-CAM videos. Here you can see a beautiful new perspective on the Jezero Delta. And if we can get the next image, also a new perspective on some of the beautiful stratigraphy around our landing site, which is up near on the far right side of this image. So now to put all of this in context for us, I'll hand it over to Dr. Thomas Zerbuchen.
Well, what we've seen here today is really nothing short of amazing. You know, and perhaps you've had moments like this before. Some of you have told me that I was too young to remember, but they had a moment like that, for example, when they observed the first landing on the moon. They had moments like that where it felt that we took a big leap, not just in this case because of at JPL or at NASA, but a big leap as humanity. Of course, it's a leap that was enabled by work over decades, and on this mission for close to a decade. So what's possible today, or what feels possible, is different even than yesterday. It's how it feels to make history, and that's how I feel today. I'm so moved by this. Wow. The video of Perseverance descent and landing, and the amazing panorama and the first wide landscape shot of Jezero Crater, seen with human eyes, and the first Martian sounds are the closest you can get to landing on Mars without putting on a pressure suit. That video, I believe, should become mandatory viewing for young people who not only want to explore other worlds and build spacecraft to take them there, but also want to be part of diverse teams achieving all the audacious goals of our future. At the center of that is a team, and I'll ask for the next image. You should know, I met this team. I see me there in a dark suit next to Dr. Laurie Glaze, the Planetary Division Director, and Al, he just talked to you, is on his knee in there, and he entered the Ascent and Landing team, and we met him just hours before that historic landing. And I love this picture because, of course, the event today demonstrates that the human aspect of exploration.
1996년에
And that is, of course, every reason for
97년에 창조한 소노제였는데
at NASA, and also why we do things. The video and audio images here provided to us are from the surface of Mars, and sometimes we forget as we look at that. Well, a rowboat shouldn't get all the fun. We want to make sure that all of us on Earth see and feel what it's like to be on Mars and explore other worlds. I'm so excited for the more than 1 million students who joined the Mars Student Challenge, and the many more across the world who will be inspired by these images released today and even yesterday. Their journey is also just the beginning. Just imagine Perseverance sitting on a hill recording the next Martian landing with a cargo that is basically a rocket, and then the first from another world with samples bound for Earth. that are collected by Perseverance now in the near future. Imagine follow the entry, descent, and landing of the first human crew on the planetary surface sometimes in the future. These future historical events, which I'm confident will happen, will be enabled by women and men working in diverse teams. Imagine the goals we can achieve together. So what is possible? Sometimes to address that question, it's good to look back and think where we've come from, just like my friend Mike did earlier. We've been on a journey, both as a human race for quite a while now, and I don't want to show this next image of Sojourner of the Pathfinder
나부캠이 찍은 이 이미지 중앙에는 퍼서비어런스 로봇 기술인 화성 토양 샘플 저장 시스템이 있습니다. 이걸 얘기한 거예요.
Ultimately lasted for 85 Earth days in 1997. I remember that really distinctly. Through Pathfinder indeed, it weighed 23 pounds and returned a surprising amount of data back to Earth and a surprising amount of science for many scientists, I must say. Some people didn't expect quite that much, and that's what happens sometimes too when you innovate, just like we've seen here. We've grown from that seed. Now Perseverance is the size of a small car, and it's ready for us for the next giant leaps. And here's a picture that we're putting up that is one of the many pictures
화성에서 표면에서 녹음된 최초의 소리, 누렁이와 바람 돌풍이었다. 두 번째 마이크에서 순수한 소음이 포착되었다.
The sample caching system on there, because it's that sample caching system that will connect this mission to the samples that will bring back to Earth and other historic feed we're working on. This system is on the surface of Mars now. I remember distinctly looking at it before we packed it up from JPL and moved it over. Then, of course, launched it from the top of a rocket. This, my friends, is one of the indelible moments in NASA's history where what we can see and what we can learn and what we can hope for in the future and the extraordinary emotions that makes it feel all of us coming together. That human element will fuel our future at Mars, which is bright indeed. And it will fuel the dreams of a new generation that will return to Mars and also study the samples that we will eventually bring home. I'm so grateful to this team and literally the thousands, both at JPL and within the US and around the world, to all of you who have engaged in this mission. As has been noted, the raw image pipeline is opening up. Please go take a look at these data and play with them, especially those of you, the children and the youth that have signed up to our educational campaign. What can you find in these pictures? And who's going to compose the first piece of music with actual Mars sound? Mike, Matt, Jennifer, Al, many of you leaders, I could not be more proud of both you and your team. On behalf of our entire NASA leadership team, a heartfelt and a proud thanks to you. For the record, Matt, I'm so glad for your idea about these cameras. We will learn a lot from that, much more than we ever expected. And of course, this is just a start. For the surface team, the real work starts now to evaluate the surrounding and start a plan and our trajectory across Jezero Crater. It's a big team and there are lots of discussions.
이걸 보면서 머릿속에서 떠오르는 생각. 영화가 아니라 이건 실제 영상이야. 이것은 실제 영상입니다.
Amazement to come. Back to you, Raquel.
Thank you, Thomas. And we'll now move on to your questions. Remember, if you are a member of the media on the phone line, you can press *1 to get into the queue. If you're on social media, you can tag questions with the hashtag Countdown to Mars. Now, starting on the phone line is Bill Harwood from CBS News.
Yeah, hi. I guess this is for Al or maybe for Matt. I mean, other than the loose spring you guys saw in the heat shield, is there anything at all in that video that looked all phenomenal? I mean,
콜레이락스가 콜레이락스 이거 밑에 보이죠? 이건 구멍 뚫린 볼들. 콜레이락스가
give you free praise, but I didn't see. I don't see anything like that. So
콜레이락스가 알고 있었는데.
Thanks.
We did take that one we've been pouring over those videos and looking for anything that could be wrong, and also looking at the rest of the data. And we did have a pretty clean run through entry set landing. There were a couple bits of the parachute that came off. Some of that was expected. In fact, we knew that there was some risk of that as well. And there was, if you look at the video, you can actually see a chunk. That's the radome. It's a cover for one of the low antennas we used during cruise and also during part of EDL. That came off. We had hoped that it wouldn't, and we tried to restrain it a little bit better, but we knew that it was a risk that it might. So that's something we noticed that's on there as well. There's a couple other little things that we've been taking a look at, but I think you're in general right that the entry, descent, and landing system behaved as expected, and it did what it had to do. Especially given, and a big shout out to the terrain relative navigation system, which put us down in the safest spot that was available. 정말 엄청난 이미지입니다. 이 장치에 우리에게 너무 많은 기쁨을 줄 것 같습니다. Worked great if we didn't have something like terrain relative navigation. So, yeah, the landing system worked great.
Great, thanks, Al. And up next we have Marcia Dunn from the Associated Press.
Yes, hi.
Thomas,
Wonderful
Mission
video.
to Mars,
I'm just wondering,
Mission
did
to
the
Mars
JPL team get to
챌린지의
see snippets
분노가
coming
모두는
down in the
이미지를 다음번에
video, and then,
함께
or
돌면서
did
무엇을
you
찾고
have to wait
발견하시는지를
until this
확인하도록
1 minute
장려합니다.
video was put
헤이더는 그중
together?
한 명이며
What was the
검색을 후원하고
reaction when you
있습니다.
first saw the video and laid eyes on it? And for David, why do you think the mic didn't work during descent? Thank you.
인내가 하늘에 도착하고 있어요. 이 집은요. 그래서 자, 이전에는 볼 수 없던 모습이 공개됐죠.
Mission support area this week just because I kept waiting for every little bit of information to come back from, particularly from these cameras.
바로 여기 떴죠. 19분째 심사네요.
And I can tell you, every time we got something, people were overjoyed, giddy. They were like kids, you know, in a
계속 봐도
camp
이건
store.
지리지 않는 정말 대단한
You know, we get a thumbnail, which literally is just a really low-res, blocky looking thing of one of those videos that came down first, and we'd just be falling on the floor, excited with what we were seeing, and that's before even the high-res came. You know, there's a lot of people that have contributed to this entry, descent, and landing system. Our chief engineer, Adam Stelzner, happens to be here in the studio. He was kind of the father of the Sky Crane system. This started 15 years ago for him. He and his team have never seen this system operate before, not even on the Earth, because we can't test it on the Earth.
원시 이미지
So this is the
데이터를
first
완전히
time
자동으로
we've had a
전달하지
chance as
않을
engineers to
때,
actually
이
see what we
이미지가
designed.
얼마나 훌륭한지 대해서 이야기하는
I
것을
just
보면
can't,
짜릿한
it's hard for
느낌입니다.
me to
이분이 제가 알기로는
express just how emotional it was and how exciting it was for everybody as we got this information down.
이거 댓글에
I'll turn it over to Dave to say a couple words.
여기도 마찬가지입니다.
Can I just chime in on the
아래로 내려오는 모든 이미지야 파이프라인 즐기라고 반복해서 말했지만은
when we get these first images, any of these imaging systems, the test images never look as good as the real thing. It's not even close. In fact, it's very hard to simulate a lot of these things, especially these, you know, Sky Cranes and things. And so the images that we normally see during test programs are,
마이크에 하드에 문제가 없다 생각합니다.
there's like a ladder in the background, or the lighting's never quite right, or there's a car. In the case of the EO cams, we have these big targets out in parking lots,
하강하고 아니 진입해가지고 하강해가지고 착륙하는 동안에도 마스크는 켜져 있었는데 무슨 일이 있었는지 몰라도 통신 오류가 좀 발생했다.
feeling where it just all just snaps into place, and you get these pictures that are just like perfectly, you know, they're pictures of Mars that you can never simulate here on Earth.
불행히 녹음은 안
We all experience that, especially after we go through months and months of testing, and the images don't really look that great, and you know, people get skeptical. Like, are these cameras really that great?
내려오면서
that looks like a
들리는 소리
garage or something.
그걸 좀 들을 수 있었으면 정말 좋았을 텐데.
It's just amazing to get these pictures, and I think we all feel that way because we're all
이건 주말에 공개했던 거죠.
insides of labs and everything, and they're never that great. But
주말에 공개된 이미지를 고정하는 컬럼의 지오메트리의 설명입니다. 새로운 것은 자 화성의 목적을 기다릴 수 없다는 거죠.
Friday, when the data started to come down and we kind of realized what we had, I was sitting at home. And my phone started to go off, and I was getting FaceTime from people who were in the MSA. And what was happening was that they were starting to show them on the monitors that we have hanging on the wall. And people were turning their phones around and saying, Gruel, you got to see this reaction. And people were just jumping up and down and giddy and ecstatic. And it was a great feeling. I mean, from where I was sitting, I not only was excited to see these videos and what we had captured, it was also the fact that a lot of people had put in a lot of effort in to make this system
이렇게 시작했는데 화성
and to actually
탐사를
reward that effort
이렇게
and
이제 우리가
to
이게
pay it
보고
back
진행하고 있습니다.
and get this excitement going. It made me super happy. I was glad to see that all the hard work, all the dedication had come in, and that everyone was just excited about not only what
그래서
we
EDL
captured,
중에
but
이게 하강
also what this
진입해가지고 하강해가지고 창중하는 중에 마이크가 녹음이 안 됐어요. 녹음이 안 된 이유를 궁금해하는 사람들 위해서 마이크가 대화는 자 여기서는 기관이 같아요. 여기서는 자 리눅스를 실행합니다. 물론 마이크로 모니터가 이 상태로 작동하지는 않았어요.
digitizing the analog signals that the microphone picked up and then passing them back to the computer that actually stores all the data. We're not exactly sure why it happened. It could have been a fact that it was just so much data streaming into the system. We tested it, but you know, obviously everything's a little bit different from ours than we actually have here on the ground. So we were pretty quickly able to think there was a hardware issue with the microphone, which is why we were able to and get their concurrence to try to turn the microphone on then on that SAL2 boundary. It's just unfortunate that that error happened during the EDL, and we just weren't able to record any of the data that we generated during the sequence.
All right, thanks. And up next we have Chris Davenport from the Washington Post.
Hi, thanks for taking the time and for showing us. I really appreciate it. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the cameras that were used to record the video. I understand they were specially designed, maybe a commercial company called SL IR Systems. Just curious to know, like, what goes into, you know, designing a camera to sustain the G's, the blasts of the thrusters, everything that has got to go through to capture that images. Thanks.
Okay, so the cameras were originally purchased from a company called Point Grey, which was then bought out by FLIR. And I can tell you that the modifications we made to the camera were minimal. This was not a camera specifically designed for use on Mars. You can purchase the same camera off the internet for whatever applications you might have for it. The only things we did is we actually added some bonding material on the inside
그리고
to try to
이거는
make sure
이거
that
좀 나중에 좀 시간 남으면 제가 좀 빨리 끝나면 이제 이야기 하나 해드릴게요. 이거 난리가 났어 지금.
that the camera would continue to operate.
미국에서 난리 난 게 지금 한국에서 지금 영향을 미치고 있습니다.
Because in the vacuum of space, they had the ability to outgas material, and if that material deposited itself on the detector, then we would get the clear images that we actually got. But other than that,
퍼서비어런스 노버의 성공적인 착륙과 사진 비디오를 캡처했으며 화성에 녹음된 첫 번째 오디오를 이제 공개를 했습니다.
Thank you.
계속 나오죠.
And up next we have Michael Sheets from CNBC.
자, 마스 퍼서비어런스는 오늘 일찍 화성에서 새 사진을 보냅니다. 화성에 도착할 뻔이다. 곧 지구를 돌아갈 수 있는 이 전문지 시각 지지를 보는 사실을 놀랐습니다. 하고 사진작가 그래 스콧이 이야기를 하고 있네요. 와. 지금쯤이면 이 노버의 임무에 대해서 들어보셨을 것입니다. 그리고 이 영광을 위해 빨간 도넛을 집을 계획을 할 수도 있습니다. 우리가 이 연대기를 들어가면서 퍼서비어런스의 사명과 인류 화성에 집착을 알 수 있을 겁니다. 라고 해가지고 이런 사진을 올렸네요. 너무 멋있습니다.
Well, let's see. Adam's not up here, but I can channel him for just a moment, perhaps, and tell you that you know, this is a thrill of a lifetime. I think not just for Adam, but all the people that contributed to this architecture development. Back on Curiosity, I remember when we first briefed this system, you know, with the supersonic parachutes and you know, multi-body systems, and we're going to lower this thing on a tether, and people just looked at us like we were insane. You know, and Adam and his team, which Al was part, you know, they kept at it and they explained why it made sense. They explained why it was robust. They explained why it would work.
그
It was not easy to
지금
build. I will tell
미국의
you that.
퍼서비언스하고 중국의 화성 탐사선을 비교를 하는 거예요. 그래서 뭐 이거는 뭐 당연히 월등히 뭐 퍼서비언스가 당연히 엄청나다. 뭐 그건 맞는 말이죠. 누구도 부인할 수 없습니다. 근데 그렇게까지 그 비교를 해야 될 필요가 있는가 는 생각이 들었어요. 그렇게 따지면 우리 한국하고 비교를 하면은 우리 한국의 모습은 정말 말할 것도 없죠. 네, 각각의 의미가 있습니다. 내년에 이제 그 유럽에 이제 러시아에 이제 화성 탐사선이 이제 화성 도착을 하는데 그것도 처음 성공하는 거예요. 근데 그것도 나름의 의미가 있고요. 그래서 그걸 절대 평가할 수는 없다고 저는 생각합니다. 항상.
As Matt mentioned, as a fresh-faced kid, when the Sky was invented and I was in that room, and
저거 영상이 올리면 이제 또 수많은 사람들이 저거 영상 가지고 이제 만든다고 난리치고.
we didn't know for sure it was going to work again.
뭐 저도 그러긴 하겠지만요.
And then for us to see it is incredible. And just starting with the Sky
이렇게 생방송으로 이렇게 계속 볼 수 있다는 게 정말 가능만으로도
one thing that's
정말
of course of a
대단합니다.
lot of interest, especially as we start landing bigger things, is the plume ground interaction. The interaction between those rockets and what they're doing to the ground and how they kick things around. And we've got great video of that here this time, both from the rover download camera and the descent stage download camera. We can see how those how they create those scours and stuff gets pushed together and creates a sheet underneath the rover. We can see that all occurring. So that's
그래서
super useful.
이런 것을 통해서 정말로 우리가 얼마나 또 여러 기술을 또 발전할 수 있는지 한번 더 생각해 보게 되네요.
Are at 75 frames per second. So we can see that inflation that only occurs in 0.7 seconds, in less than a second. You see that snap open and look at all the details of how it unfolds and how it's symmetrically inflated. And all those things are very useful for future missions, both whether they're landing more things in people or stuff and then people. SRL, other missions are going to use future missions like the sample retrieval missions are likely going to use
이
things
방송이 좀 이제 정리가 되면은 이제 좀 밤새 좀 나온 뉴스를 조금 정리해가지고 좀 간단하게 이야기하고 마무리를 짓도록 하겠습니다. 네. 제가 이제 스페이스 뉴스를 매일 정리를 해야 되는데 제가 정리를 못했다가 그래도 이제 정리하는 게 열심히 정리하는 게 낫겠구나 하는 것을 많이 느껴가지고 네, 이제 열심히 정리하도록 하겠습니다.
I was wondering if you can give me a few more details about how the data came back. There was 30 gigabytes that was collected. How much has come back, and what was the data rate that you were able to send information back?
So I can say that as part of our commission activity, we actually walk the data rate up over the course of our different overflights with the orbiters. And so we start with a lower rate, 2,000, 8,000, and then we increase that into an adaptive data rate with the orbiter, in which we can continue to go many megabits, 2 meg, 8 meg, and then much further beyond that over the course. The total volume that I don't have off the top of my head, and so maybe, I don't know if that's something that Dave or we can provide for you later.
그리고 또 이제
Did you have how many images you got back? Yeah, we counted. So we counted yesterday that we're releasing today. There was about 4,500 that we've gotten so far that we're pushing out to the web today.
MR로가 다른 사진들이 이제 찍어가지고 했죠. 그래서 여기 이제 자 이제 분리된 거 다 보여줍니다. 그 부분에.
900 megabits per pass.
근데 그 이 MR로도요. 이제 공부하면 하면 할수록요 재미있는 게 진짜 많아요. MR로가 한 2015년인가 제가 이게 발사가 된 지 한 15년 정도 했어요. 그러니까 2005년 정도 됐죠. 그러니까 이게 큐리오시티하고 그 이제 퍼서비언스를 이제 거의 중계하다시피 이제 돌고 있는데 모양도 좀 희한하게 생겨가지고 웃기게 생겨가지고 네 중간에 엄청 그 많은 활약을 했습니다 지금까지.
Yeah. And I want to add one more thing I wanted to mention about the camera technology and then this data. We haven't mentioned it, but in addition to use commercial cameras, we're using a commercial computer, an Intel-based PC. It's running Linux, open source. So it's the first open source, at least that I know of, open source Linux box running on the surface of Mars. It's actually inside the rover. It's quite compact. And so there's the Linux operating system. And we compress the video using FFmpeg, which is another open source tool. So thank you to the open source community for allowing us to use your amazing software. Appreciate it.
I just very briefly.
오늘 그 나온 거 좀 정리하는데 정신
You saw
없을 것
some of the
같습니다.
terrific imagery from the Mars
어떻게 해?
Reconnaissance Orbiter. We've been getting fantastic support from the
정리를
orbiter
아주
community.
빡세겠는데.
Not just MRO for both that imagery and the comms, but also from Maven, which is a Goddard spacecraft. From
그리고 또 나온
Odyssey, one
뉴스.
of our older orbiters.
이거 정리하기
and
정신
from
없겠네.
ESA, European trace gas
슈트
orbiter
전기를
as well. Some
자
of the
슈트
biggest
전개를
speed
확인하십시오.
flashes
아름답습니다.
we've
슈트의
had.
패턴은 JPL이
Brought back a lot
슈트의
of
방향을
this
파악하는 데
imagery
도움이 됩니다.
came from the
이게
partners in
방향
Europe and
바람 방향을 확인하기 위해서 예, 저렇게 JPL이라는
Okay, and up next on the phone line
저기
is Mike Wall from space.com.
저기 패턴을 만들었다. 이렇게 이야기를 했고요.
Thank you all
자,
for doing this.
밑에도
And yeah, it's really an amazing video. Thanks for sharing it. Yes, a question for Dave. What do you
무슨 말이지?
anticipate doing
이거
maybe with
번외한 난해한
the mic
이건데.
now that it's up and running? Do you see
나는
it
낙하산
having
재료가
any
내 길 아래에 있는
kind of
공장에서 만드는 걸
uses during the
알았다. 퍼시가 화성에
deployment
도착하는 걸
of the
돕는
robotic arm and
나의
sort
지역의
of
일부.
like the instrument checkouts and so forth?
이거 해석이 안 돼요.
Yeah, I mean, what do you see it doing aside from recording Martian wind and the sound of the dirt under the wheels and so on? Thank you.
Yes, we've had a lot of discussion about how we might be able to use both the EDL cam microphone and the super cam microphone to do those type of diagnostic stuff. I mean, the ops team right now, I don't want to speak for Jessica, but they're focused on getting the system deployed, and capturing noise of that is definitely not the first priority. They need to focus on getting this vehicle ready to perform some amazing science. But that doesn't mean in the future we could not sit down and discuss the possibility of capturing audio files of an actuator as it actually spins on the surface of Mars. You know, that the noise is an incredible thing that engineers can use to basically detect the health of moving systems, gears and actuators and things like that. And so if we get a snapshot of actuators today, and you know, you can compare over time, do another snapshot, another audio file of that actuator in the future, compare the two and see if there's anything that can be learned.
일단 저는 끝까지 한번 가보도록 하겠습니다.
Now, with that said, I do need to remind everybody that the microphone that's in the EDL camera system, just like all of the cameras and other hardware, is
야사가 정말 고마운
off-the-shelf
게요.
hardware. It is not
이런 수많은 엄청난 자료를 있잖아요. 무상으로
in the
제공합니다.
hostile environment of Mars.
그래서
It gets
나사는
down
저작권을 절대로 주장하지
120
않아요.
degrees
어지간히
plus below
있었는데.
zero at night, and then it warms up.
여기 유튜브에 올린 것도 마음대로 쓰라고 합니다. 네.
Those temperature
아마
cycles
지금
and that cool
나사의
temperature are going
그
to
어떤 유튜브 어떤 구독이나 이제 그런 자료들을 돈으로 한 사람은 어마어마할 거예요. 근데 어지간해서는 뭐
The super cam
저작권
microphone
삭제는
might
그렇게
continue
잘
to work.
되더라고요.
It actually is designed a little bit more for this particular environment. It can last longer. So I think, you know, as you heard, I think Dr. Z mentioned earlier, we're always surprised by how rugged and robust some of our items are, how long they actually last. You know, they continue to operate far longer than we designed them. We've gotten pretty lucky over the last couple of days. Perhaps we'll get lucky and the hardware will continue to operate on the surface of Mars and allow us to do those type of diagnostic things in the future. I don't know, Jeff, you want to add anything more about how you might consider using them?
태평양 시간으로 한 저기가 12시, 오전 12시 정도 된다고 합니다, 지금. 저기가 JPL이 지금, JPL이
capability that was part of the cruise and entry descent and landing software package that we're operating right now. We've also carried that capability forward into our surface software. And so, assuming the hardware is good, we're open and ready to use it.
Yep, and I will mention to the question, we actually have gotten requests from instrument teams wanting to turn on the microphone to observe their instrument functioning. Moxie is one of the instruments that's going to be generating oxygen.
잠을 자고 싶은데 9시에 또 가야 돼서
they actually want us to use the microphones to do diagnostic acoustic measurements. So I actually think that this might become something that all rovers might want, because everybody knows that when you hear something squeaking, it's diagnostic. Maybe you need to check it out, and it tells you a little bit about how it works. And so we will find out how these get used. It's actually kind of exciting. And we're getting requests from the teams. So we're working to put those into the plan.
Say, I hope it does survive long enough so that we can hear those wheels crunch over the surface of the planet, because I think we will hear it. And I think it'd be great to hear that big rotary percussive jackhammer drill.
이거.
sample.
이거 2판이요, 2판.
On Mars.
이게 미생물, 아니 바이러스, 미생물, 박테리아죠. 공룡, 그리고 이거 사람 여기 이렇게 여기 가지고 여기 써진 게
Up next is Lisa
두세
Grossman from
개의
Science
한
News.
시작, 하나의 시작, 두세 개 하나의 시작이 이렇게 붙였어요.
The video is amazing, and a lot of it looks a lot like the animations that you've shown before the landing.
그리고 제가 알기로는 아마 이게 아마 그걸 거예요 아마.
Excuse me.
그 옷감을 그 우주복 소재를 해가지고 이게 한번 테스트하는 걸 거예요 아마 이게. 그래서 노출시켜가지고. 네, 보이시죠? 두세 개 하나의 시작해가지고 DNA도 있고 태양계도 지금 화성까지 그려진 것도 있고. 네, 아주 잘 준비를 해가지고 이렇게 했습니다. 이걸 이제 잘 고해상 지켰단 말이죠. 다음은 퍼서비어런스 먹어의 원인은 마스크캠치에 찍은 첫 번째 사진 하나입니다. 저는 해시계를 확대했습니다. 해시계. 상징은 태양경성부터 우주시계까지 우리의 역사를 나타냅니다. 이 얼마나 결이.
Exactly. I mean, it's an amazing problem to have.
Justin, do you have anything, any thoughts?
Yeah, I can attest to it's
상징들을
real.
엄청나게
It's
많이
actually real. I
쓰는데.
know because I know the data very well. It's stunning and it's real. And that was our thought too when we first saw it. We're like, wow, this looks like doesn't look real.
아 저는 진짜
But
이거는
it
다
is,
에어될
and
것
that's
같아요.
what's
저기
so
지금
amazing
이야기하는
about
거
it.
앞으로.
And you know, I know I've seen some of the video games are getting pretty good. You know, second glance, you look at a sports game and it looks like it's real, but it's fake. But this is actually real stuff, and that's why it's so exciting. And I actually just want to say, for those of you that go watch the videos, personally, I like watching like quarter speed or even slower because there's so much detail in there that anyone who's done animations knows that would take a lot of time to do. And it all happened so quickly, and the camera cut everything, and so that's how we know it's real because we know so much about these systems. But there's just so much detail that's one way that you could.
이게 이게 큐리오시티에 찍힌 새겨진 것
I remember
같아요.
early on MSL when they started coming up with the animation for Curiosity's landing. We had a discussion about the plumes actually coming out of this end stage.
미세구나.
And the fact that
가판에 이게 다 새겨진 게 소너저, 스피릿, 오퍼튜니티, 큐리오시티. 이게 그리고 이제 여기가 소너저, 스피릿, 오퍼튜니티. 그리고 여기가 큐리오시티. 이게 퍼서비어런스 여기에 이 작은 여기 위에 있는 거 인조리티. 예. 이게 여기서 찍혔어요. 가정용 자동차 스티커라고.
The same comment for the exquisite detail on the rover. If you actually look at every cal target's in place, every little twist, every tie, cable tie, they're all there. In the animations, you usually don't have that. When you get down to that level of detail, at least now you typically don't, because a lot of the things happen kind of last minute, and as the rover's getting built and people slap things on and they're not in the drawing.
오래 갔던 많은 그 탐사사.
That's another thing that's amazing about this video. Every single detail is in there. So encourage people to look at it.
아라미트 그리고 중국의 TN1 그리고 퍼서비어런스. 아 여기 엑소마스가 들어올 뻔했는데요.
A social media question to take. Jerome on Twitter asks, some pictures we can see dirt and small rocks inside the real wheel rim. Was this expected, and will it become an issue if more dust and sand is picked up along the way?
Yep, I can speak to that. So it's not uncommon for us to have rocks and dirt inside the wheels.
그래서 알첸이 설명했듯이 화성에 착륙하는 미래의 우주 비행사를 위한 비행장은 없을 것입니다. 따라서 스카이크레인 복고풍 노폐에 의해서 발생된 먼지에 대한 연구는 유인 탕육 시스템의 향후 개발.
And then when you look at its performance and its accuracy, how do you judge it? And can you see that improvement over Curiosity?
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I was really hoping for a chance to speak to that a little bit, actually. The Lander's vision system.
죄송합니다. 제가 또 컴퓨터 맛이 갔어요. 또 재부팅돼가지고 또 이러네요.
Based on the targeted. Well, we took many images on the way down. We were very able to match up what we saw with our onboard map. It was almost perfect, better than many of our field tests.
컴퓨터 하루에 한 번씩 이렇게 맛이 가가지고.
So we got a very good lock on where we were. And in fact, when you combine that with our safe target selection, where we flew to,
빨리 이렇게 재부팅하면 이제 뭐 실시간 문제는 없는데 정말 죄송한 마음을 죄송한 하다는 말씀을 드립니다.
and given how well the Lander vision system performed, and our system in flying is there. We only missed by 5 meters. So that was really great. I mean, I think we really showed that this system can do what we wanted it to do in helping us figure out where to go and go to a safe spot.
Great, thanks, Al. We have so many questions coming in that we are going to keep the phone lines open for a little while longer. Remember to press *1 to get in our queue. For now, I'm going to take a social media question from Bob on Twitter who asks, how does the processing power of the onboard
소셜
computer
미디어에서
compare
질문을
to
받는
a
것 같아요.
great smartphone? Matt, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question.
정말 죄송하다는 말씀을 다시 한번 드립니다. 진짜 컴퓨터 이거 하루에 한 번씩 오고 이럽니다.
Are going to work. And space is a pretty hostile environment, and the surface of Mars is even worse with the temperature swings which we were
저
talking
컴퓨터가 맛이 갔어요. 예, 재부팅이 돼가지고 예, 이렇게 됐습니다. 죄송한 말씀을 드리는데.
So as a result of that, we have a tendency to use systems that have been around for a while. They're well shaken out.
버퍼링이 좀 있는 것 같은데요.
And on Perseverance, we're using the same computer that we used on Curiosity, in large part because we know it worked, and we wanted to have that successful flight heritage that we had from the previous mission. So this is a computer that you would have found 15 or maybe even 20 years ago that we're flying.
컴퓨터랑 포맷하고 다시 깔든지 한번 지금 다시 지금 뭐 설치를 해야 되겠습니다. 지금 노트북도 날린 상태에서.
It is always a thrill for us when we have the opportunity, like we did in this particular application, to bring that kind of technology into our systems. It's a very powerful way to multiply our functionality and our capability. And so this was a great example of being able to use new technology. So I don't know if that's an exact answer to the question, but in short, that's a summary.
Thank you, Matt. And Thomas, we actually have a question for you coming in. Hayden, an 11-year-old from Ireland on Twitter asks, what advice would you give to a budding planetary scientist in working towards maybe being part of the mission that will bring back samples to Earth in the future?
Oh, I'm so glad for that question.
일단은 방송이 끝나는 대로 저도 방송을 끝내도록 할게요. 와, 근데 이거
exactly the right time to get into that career. Right? And that now there could not be a better time to join that career.
캡처를 한 게
If you started 10 years earlier,
아까 이제 봤던 게
in 10 years now is the time to start that. The advice I would give is look, go really start playing with data right away. I mean, yes, go to school. The teachers that are there are your allies going forward. That eventually, probably you'll be perhaps at the university or at an advanced school. But go to school, do that. But the other thing I want to just give you advice on, Hayden, is we're putting all these data out. Be your own researcher. Learn how to do that. Go play with it. That's what research is so much about.
지금 좀 버퍼링이 좀 있습니다.
Just excited as you are, and I'm sure soon enough we'll have you on our teams in the future.
That's some great advice. Thank you, Thomas. And up next we have on the phone lines Alexander Witz from Nature magazine.
Great, thanks very much. I'm not quite sure who to address this to, but I wanted to ask about InSight and whether InSight had heard Perseverance landing.
So I'm not sure anybody up here has the latest information. Do you, Al? Have you heard anything new?
Other folks on the team, I'm not sure if this is official or not, but they hadn't seen much yet.
I think we'd have to check, to be honest, to be sure we got the right answer.
Great, thank you. And then another phone line question from Jackie Goddard from the Times of London.
Hello, congratulations everyone. One of the most common questions that I get from readers who aren't generally a scientific audience but regular folks is what is the point of spending all this money to go to another planet and explore it? And sometimes that's not even a question, it's a statement. There are cynics out there. Can you say why we explore, and how does humanity benefit from you finding out what you find out and doing what you do? Thank you.
Everyone who wants to answer, time to answer.
I can, or Thomas, did you want to?
Yeah, why don't
왜
I
근데
just
상태가 안 좋은지.
turn it over to you, Matt? Is that okay if I start? Matt, you good with that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, okay, I'm thinking about this question all the time. Why do we explore? And of course, when we do that at NASA, I just want to let everybody know that if you look at how much money we're spending on each planet and the exploration of each planet, of course, the majority, the money the planet we're spending most money on, of course, is the Earth. The place where we live, where our friends live, where our history is, and where our future is going to be.
이제
And
그
so
영상에
we're not
대한
confused about the importance and
자, 영상에 대한 이제 분석도 있는데요. 자, 정리를 해보면은
exploration is
어쩔 수
going
없어.
forward. Exploration for us though is broader than
근데
just
지금 상태가 안
what
좋으니까
is useful right now. And the reason we're so convinced that that is important is first of all,
상태 지금 스템의 상태가 그렇게 좋지 않아요. 저도 이유를 잘 모르겠는데 지금
truly historic questions. In so many ways are what we're really about. Addressing those is what we're really about as humans. We want to be sure, as we look at our contributions of our generations, that we really move forward what we know and also really affect how we think about ourselves. And that so often comes through research. There's a second reason though, it's truly secondary, but I'm going to mention it anyway. So often, and surprisingly, the results and the technologies that we're building for the very questions that are really driven by fundamental science questions are extremely useful. And I just want to remind you that perhaps today, whoever asked that question,
보시면은 여기 이제 이 영상에서 이제 눈에 띄는 것 중에 하나는 침식된 충돌 분화구가 있는 작은 영역이다. 그래서 바위가 유리를 치는 것처럼 바위가 부서지는 것을 볼 수가 있다라고 하고 있어요. 그래서 여기 바위가 이렇게 쉽게 말해서 여기 지금 이렇게 갈라지는 모습이 동심원으로 갈라지는 모습이 보이더라 하는 거죠. 그래서 좀 특이하다 그렇게 얘기하는 거죠. 이분도 누구시야 간데? 이분도 화성 지질학자야. 이분도 화성 지질학자. 대단하십니다. 다 나오시네요. 그리고 자 여기 이제 아까 그 의문을 제기하신 분. 컴퓨터기라고 해보시죠.
In some ways, it's kind of a moot question because how can we not explore? It's just who we are. It's what we are. It's in our DNA. You couldn't stop us as a species from exploring. Part of the reason why we're at the top of the food chain is because we're curious, because we want to go to places we haven't been. We want to answer questions we don't know the answer to. Sometimes we want to find the questions we don't even know need to be asked.
이제 좀 노력을 해가지고 이제 요약분을 좀 정리해가지고 다시 올리도록 할게요.
And it opens new horizons, new frontiers. It inspires us. It inspires kids, and as Thomas mentioned, all the academic programs that are paying attention here.
본身그렇게 문제는 없습니다. 일단 상태가 아주 좋다는데. 그래서 이제 사진 나왔어요.
That's important for us.
이거 펼쳐지는 사진 다 나왔어요. 사진 이거 다 얘기했어. 와.
We can move on now to another call from Matt Kaplan from Planetary Radio.
Hi, everyone. Congratulations from not just me, but all of the Planetary Society.
자, 이거 그 영상에 대해서 이야기하고 있는데 모두 동일한 타임 스탬프를 가지고 있는 것 같습니다. 확실하지 않지만 엠팩스트가 저장 장치에 기록된 시간이라고 생각합니다. 이미지 파일 이름을 보면은 적절한 순서로 정렬해야 되고 총 3개의 낙하산 캠이 있음을 기억하십시오. 지금 프레임 상에 지금 좀 그걸 가지고 이야기하는 것 같아요.
So much closer to the surface of Mars than we have from the orbiters, in spite of the great job that they're capable of. Does this
대부분 퍼서비어런스 나브캠 이미지는 1280 곱하기 960입니다. 대부분 카메라의 기본 해상도는 그보다 훨씬 높지만 가까운 거리에서 초점이 맞지 않으므로 자, 안으로 노보데크 이미지의 고해상도 버전을 반환하지 않을 것입니다. 라고 추측을 합니다.
I guess I've compared it, you know, to several people who have asked me how I'm feeling. You know, what's it like?
큐리오시티하고
소개 줄게요.
큐리오시티하고 퍼서벤스의 이제 소울 로버의 데크, 이게 이제 나브캠의 이미지를 비교해 보면요. 자, 나브캠이 어디 좀 확인해 볼게요. 나브캠의 이미지를 좀 확인을 해보면, 자, 전체적으로 덜 자갈이 많은 풍경이 결과일 수 있습니다. 이게 큐리오시티인가 이게? 그리고 이게 퍼서비어런스죠. 여기 명판이 딱 있죠. 이게 퍼서비어런스. 근데 여기 자갈이 별로 없다 그 말이에요. 작은 도에. 나쁘게임이 어딨지 근데? 나쁘게임이 어딘 줄 알아요. 제가 뭐 이야기를 하죠. 제가 그냥 혼자서 이렇게 떠드는 것 같이 보여도 자, 왜냐면 제가 이렇게 정리를 뭐 이런 식으로 해야지 그래도 정리가 저도 한 시간이 되니까 저도 이렇게 이야기를 하면서 하면은 제가 나중에 또 제가 스스로 또 그거를 또 이제 제가 스스로 또 이제 그 정리를 하기 때문에요. 그 내부캠은요, 내비게이션 카메라의 약자인 내부캠인 과학 장비를 방해를 받지 않고 내비게이션에 사용되는 특정 로봇 또는 우주에서 발견되는 카메라 유형이다. 일반적으로 차량의 다음 움직임 또는 물체 추적에 기획하는데 사용되는 광각 사진을 찍는데 사용된다 라고 되어 있어요. 그래서 이거는 제가 원본이 어차피 있으니까 원본을 가지고 다시 정리를 하는 식으로 할게요. 할 겁니다. 뭐 제가 할게요 아니라. 네, 그래서 나브캠은 전체적으로 그 내비게이션 카메라다. 뭐 그렇게 생각하시면 될 것 같아요. 그래서 그 큐리오시티 같은 경우는 지상 내비게이션을 지원하기 위해서 돗대에 장착된 흑백 내비게이션 카메라 두 쌍을 가지고 있어요. 그리고 카메라는 45도 속도를 가지고 있고 가시광선을 사용해가지고 입체적인 3D 이미지를 표시한다. 패스파인더의 임무 같은 패스파인더 1997년에 창조 있잖아요. 그거 같은 카메라는 ICR 그 이미지인데요. 이것도 이미지 압축 기술이에요. 이 아무리 기술을 사용한다고 해서 나와 있어요. 뭐 하여튼 간략하게 나와 있어요. 유로 우주국의 노지타 우주선은 5도 필드와 12트 비트 1024 해상도를 가지고 있다. 카메라 하나만 있다. 그 해석 좀 되긴 했네요. 그리고 이 사진들이 PNG 그 파일 형식으로 공유하고 있다. 인사이트로 이 작업을 수행했고요. JPG 형식과 달리 PNG는 데이터 분실 없이 이미지를 압축합니다. 이 이미지의 매니아가 처리한 버전을 큐리오시티보다 더 좋게 나타납니다. 그래서 요게 잠깐만 무슨 이미지? 이게 언제 있다는 거죠? 이게 그지 이거 왼쪽에 있는 내비게이션 카메라가 이거 찍은 거. 이거 솔리 첫 번째 날에. 이런 식으로 공부가 되는구나. 정신없네. 오늘.
I said it before. We didn't have a lot of margin. We didn't have a lot of time.
자, 그래서 퍼서비어런스 노버는 길이 오른쪽 내비게이션 카메라를 이용해가지고 이미지를 획득했어요. 그래서 노버의 돛대레오 팀에 위치하고 있어 운전에 도움을 획득하고 합니다. 운전하는데 도움이 되는 이제 카메라니까 그 내비게이션 카메라 하는 얘기죠. 여기 있다는 얘기죠, 여기. 다 카메라 이제 이름이 있는데. 마스터 슈퍼케, 마슨, 여기 있죠? 나브캠으로 불리는 두 개의 컬러 스테레오 내비 카메라 엔지니어가 인내심을 퍼서비어런스를 안전하게 탐색할 수 있도록 도와주고, 특히 노버가 자율적으로 작동할 때 지구상의 컨트롤러와 상의하지 않고 자체 탐색 결정을 내릴 수 있게 합니다. 노버의 돛대에 위치한 이 두 대의 카메라에는 엔지니어들이 화성 주변의 노버를 운전하는 데 도움을 주고요. 그들은 82피트 거리에서, 즉 25m 거리에서 골프공만한 작은 물체를 볼 수가 있습니다. 자, 퍼서비어런스가 블라인드 드라이브를 하기 전에 내비게이션 카메라는 처음에 안전한 경로를 보장하는 데 도움이 됩니다. 블라인드 트레인 모르는 엔지니어가 노보에게 특정 방향으로 특정 거리를 운전하기 명령을 발생하며 노보의 컴퓨터 브레인은 힐 미끄러짐을 보거나 확인하지 않고 힐 회전에서 거리를 확인합니다. 그게 말 그래도 진짜 그 GPS 같은 역할을 한다는 거죠.
7 or 8 years for me and all these guys. We years and years of work building,
로케이션이 자, 노보의 돛대 잡히 상태이고 좌우의 눈은 16.5인치 떨어져 있다. 42cm 떨어져 있다. 주변에 자율 탐색 지원을 한다. 보시면 됩니다.
You really want that to work. Like really want it to work.
어쨌든 이런 사진 찍혔다 처음에는.
And so, but you know, it's definitely.
그 카메라가 이제 가지고 있는 기능이 있으니까 그것이 잘 작동하는지 어떻게 기능하는지 하는 얘기죠.
One of the great things about JPL is that there's a team of people here, really smart people. You go to these reviews to review your product, your designs. We call them withering reviews. You get a lot of tough questions, but that's one of the really JPL is a real gem of a place because we built this culture of
나사의 행성간 인터넷이 얼마나 훌륭한지 진짜 이야기하고 싶습니다. 그들은 주말 동안 화성에서 30GB 데이터를 훌쩍 떨어뜨렸습니다. 그러니까 이제 이거 엄청 유명한 분이에요. 나사의 수석 과학 고문이에요. 그래서 우리가 실제로 모두 혜택을 받는다. 이거 TGO는 이게는 가스 추적 오비터예요. 이게 나사 ESA에. 그래서 댓글에 절대로 좋은 점입니다. 진정은 국제적인 통신 데이터이고, 자, 근데 유럽 우주국의 기여도를 강조하지 않는 것이 좀 안타깝습니다. 내 고양이가 노네요. 알았어.
The team really did persevere, and we are here today. Up next is Leo Enright from Irish Television.
Thanks very much, Raquel.
그래서 홈투어리 걱정 마세요, 저스틴. 제가 이야기를 강조하기 위해서 여기 있습니다. 여기 있을게요. 자, 오늘 그것이 어떤 것인지 처음으로 잘 보았습니다. 퍼서비어런스 EDL 시퀀스의 놀라운 비디오도 화성에 촬영했습니다. 가장 좋아하는 부분은 어떤 부분이니까 저는 화성 하늘 스카이 크레인 깃털에 의해서 보세요. 이 깃털 모양으로 이렇게 나오잖아요. 이게 역분사 돼가지고 이 표면 먼지의 불꽃 같은 움직임이 정말로 날아갔습니다. 라고 했습니다. 정말 좋았다 했죠. 그렇습니다. 네, 첫 번째 보냅니다. 자, 제 질문에 답해주셔서 감사합니다. 이것은 정말 많은 것을 의미하며 계속 열심히 일하고 모든 단계를 즐기도록 도움을 줍니다. 근데 이분이요, 이분이 이 학생이요, 누군지 한번 가보세요. 이분 정말 재밌는 분이에요. 나이가 엄청 어린 근데 마치 그 미래의 학성 탐사를 꿈꾸기 위해서 엄청나게 여기다 올리더라고요. 아직 누군지는 잘 확실히 모르겠는데 어쨌든 좀 확인이 좀 필요할 것 같아요. 미래 우주 비행사 후보세 그런 식으로.
And what's really great is that we work together, with the science and engineering team to evaluate
이건 아닌 것 같습니다. 이건 별 상관이 없고.
And what sort of terrain is the best for our system.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's our major focus right now on the science team is answering exactly that question. What are we going to do? What do we want to do? Where do we want to go? And I'll say first of all, we're so extraordinarily happy.
계속 반복이더라고요. 그 트위터는 정신없어요.
Because we ended up right on this major geologic feature, this contact we call
it. 오늘 방송에 이제 오셔가지고 보신 것만 해도 정말 초반만 보셔도 감사합니다. 피곤하죠 오늘 진짜. 근데 이렇게 봐야 되면 정말 엄청 피곤합니다.
Undulating feature that this sort of obvious line. That we're landed right next to, and that's the big contact. One of the major features we were hoping to explore
저는 단지
in this mission, and
당신에게 작은 가족 초상화가 있다는 것을 알려드리고 싶었습니다. 이렇게 해가지고 가족 초상화가 있어요. 제가 일단은
완전히
보능성이 보였기 때문에 일단은 저도 전체 화면을 틀어놓고 좀 하도록 하겠습니다.
Sedimentary rocks, both. There's a lot of implications for both. So what I would say we're probably currently leaning toward is exploring that contact, which would lead us more, I think, to the second of the two options.
자, 그리고 나중에 다시 정리하는 식으로
a good
해가지고
amount of time while the team does the commissioning and checks all the systems out, and during that time we'll be digesting all those new images and doing a lot of strategic planning, evaluating different options, arguing amongst ourselves in the team right after
이게
this.
숨겨놨구나 이거를. 나 이것도 처음 보는데 오늘
Our
이거는.
first science team meeting post landing starts, and
일단은
immediately after
이게
that,
제
so we'll start talking about just those things.
사운드를 끄도록
So
할게요.
we'll see.
Thank you, Jessica and Ken. Up next, we have Stephen Gorman from Reuters News.
Hi, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So my question is, I have a question about the superlatives regarding the video footage of the EDL sequence and the audio of that gust of wind that was picked up on the Martian surface by the Microsoft. So I believe, is it correct to say that this video marks the first sort of moving footage of a spacecraft from that spacecraft showing its descent and landing on the surface of another world, Mars or any world, I think, right? Be that including the moon or an asteroid or anything. And then secondly, is this the first sound recording ever made on Mars or any celestial object other than Earth, or just the first one that was made that's been played back on Earth? I was wondering if you could just clarify that.
I can, let's see, on your first question, putting aside the Apollo program and the moon and just talking about planets, this is most certainly, I'm pretty sure, as far as I know, this is the first time we've been able to see our spacecraft land on another planet. And hopefully that answers the question that you asked. As far as sound, I'm not sure anybody else has any more information, but again, as to the best of my knowledge, this is the first planetary sound that's been recorded. So, yeah, go ahead, Justin.
I can add to that. In terms of sound, the InSight lander has a seismometer on it, and they did measure seismic signals that were acoustically driven and then rendered that as audio. So that could be potentially another one. But in terms of like imaging and doing video, MSL did have a descent imager that did video, 3.5 frames per second, so it was a little slower. That was the MARTI instrument. We've also done time-lapse of deployments of things on InSight. We deployed a seismometer and we do time-lapse video. Mars Pathfinder, we did time-lapse video of the rover driving down onto the surface. But then again, it's time-lapse, so seconds in between frames. So you've probably seen those. They're all out on the internet, the rover movies. I worked on that as a postdoc, actually. But this is definitely the best video of any of them. So I think we can at least say that pretty definitively. It's a whole nother level of capabilities that we now have. So.
Great. Well, that is all the time we have for questions today. Thank you so much to our panelists. We unfortunately can't answer all the media questions on there. For those with additional questions, please call JPL's Digital News and Media Office. Our social media team will continue to answer questions online, and we have a Reddit AMA with Perseverance team members starting at 1 p.m. Pacific time today. Now, to see the raw images of Mars, visit mars.nasa.gov/mars2020/multimedia.
자, 여러분 이제 드디어 끝났습니다. 예, 2시간 만에 끝났습니다. 그래서 제가 계속 이후로 내용을 정리해가지고 다시 한번 방송을 하도록 하겠습니다. 네.
I'm Raquel Villanueva. Thanks for watching.
제가 아마 오늘 오후 때 한번 정리해가지고 하도록 할게요. 여튼간에 지금까지 방송을 봐주셔서 정말 감사합니다. 네, 한번 다시 한번 보도록 할게요.
will jettison the entry balance masses in preparation for parachute deploy and to roll over to give the radar a better look at the ground.
Indicate chute deploy.
The navigation has confirmed that the parachute has deployed and we are seeing significant deceleration in the velocity. Our current velocity is 440 meters per second at an altitude of about 12 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
Heat shield SEP.
Perseverance has now slowed to subsonic speeds and the heat shield has been separated. This allows both the radar and the cameras to get their first look at the surface. Current velocity is 145 meters per second at an altitude of about 9.5 kilometers above the surface.
Nav filter converge. Velocity solution 3.3 meters per second. Altitude 7.4 kilometers.
Now has radar lock on the ground. Current velocity is about 100 meters per second, 6.6 kilometers above the surface of Mars. Perseverance is continuing to descend on the parachute. We are coming up on the initialization of terrain relative navigation and subsequently the priming of the landing engines. Our current velocity is about 90 meters per second at an altitude of 4.2 kilometers.
LVS valid.
We have confirmation that the lander vision system has produced a valid solution and part of terrain relative navigation.
Priming. TBA is nominal.
We have priming of the landing engines.
Back shell set.
Current velocity is 83 meters per second at about 2.6 kilometers from the surface of Mars. We have confirmation that the back shell has separated. We are currently performing the divert maneuver. Current velocity is about 75 meters per second at an altitude of about a kilometer off the surface of Mars.
TRN safety Bravo.
We have completed our terrain relative navigation. Current speed is about 30 meters per second, altitude of about 300 meters off the surface of Mars. We have started our constant velocity accordion, which means we are conducting the sky crane, about to conduct the sky crane maneuver. Sky crane maneuver has started, about 20 meters off the surface.
We're getting signals from MRO.
Tango Delta.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the sands of past life.